Hey guys, it's the Asian biology tutor here. So today we are going to look at 2022 May-June IGCSE Biology exam paper. This is paper 2, multiple choice question for extended. It's 0610 and it's version 21. So let's get started with number 1. Okay, so all living organisms release energy from nutrient molecules within their cells. What is the name of this characteristic? So we've seen this question quite a lot before. If you look at my other videos, they were actually same questions. And I think they actually use quite a bit of same questions in different years. So it's good to practice a few questions, like few past papers, because it's quite possible that you can get one or two same answers from previous years in your exam. So I'm saying there's a good chance. Of course, good chance can actually be like less than 20%, but hey, who knows, huh? Anyways, so what is the name of this characteristic? It releases energy from nutrient molecules within their cells. So releasing energy basically is respiration. So respiration is the release of energy from nutrient molecules such as glucose molecules in IGCSE Biology, okay? So the answer for this one is C. Number 2, which diagram shows a flower from monocotyledon? So monocotyledon means it's a plant that has one cotyledon in the seed. So in its seed. Okay. So this is the embryo part of the seed, and this part is called cotyledon. So cotyledon stores food molecules. Embryo becomes a plant when it germinates. So the upper part becomes a shoot, and the lower part becomes the roots or root. Okay, so this is the shoot. This is the root. Anyways, and monocotyledons have some characteristics, such as they have petals. They have these petals, and the number of petals are 3 or 4. Actually, it's actually not 4. They actually have multiple of 3 petals. Okay, so A, B, C. These guys actually have 5 petals, so they are likely to be dicotyledonous plants or dicotyledons. Okay, but D has 6 petals, which is of course multiple of 3. So D is the answer for this one. Okay, let's have a look at number 3 here. The diagram shows a cross section through 2 guard cells of a leaf, which labeled structures would also be found in an animal cell. So it looks like these are plant cells, right? They are plant cells because they are guard cells. So let's look at the structures. So as you can see, W should be nucleus, right? Because it's the biggest circle. X looks like it's a membrane. Y looks like it's chloroplast. Z looks like it's cell wall. So the main difference between the animal cell and the plant cell are that the plant cells have cell walls, they have chloroplasts, and this question is asking the labeled structures that are also found in animal cells. So we're not going to talk about these two as an answer, right? So it's the nucleus and the membrane that are also found in an animal cell. So W and X. Hence the answer should be A for this one. A. Okay? Sweet. Number 4. The diagram shows a cross-section through a leaf. Which label shows a tissue? So which of these structure is a tissue? Which of these structures is a tissue? That's a good question, because this question can actually become quite confusing. So when we talk about tissue is a group of cell, actually a group of same cell gathering together. So let's say there is a cell called cell A. So A is a cell. If we have A, and A, whole thing now is called the tissue. Okay, but if we have a lot of A's and a lot of B's, the cell B's, and a lot of cells called C's as well, then the whole thing now is called an organ. Okay, like the heart or the lungs and so on. But if you have heart with the blood vessels attached to it, then the whole thing now is called organ system. And if you have more of them gathered together, then we have an organism. So can you see how the concept gets developed here? So this is a cell, this is a tissue. So tissues are made of same cells. Organs are made of different cells, and organ systems are made of different organs, and different organ systems make an organism. So back to this question again. I guess A includes many different cells, right? So this should be an organ. So if we just look at it, I guess C is only showing a same type of cell. These cells are called spongy cells. These cells are called palisade cells, or palisade mesophyll cells, and these guys are also mesophyll cells as well. D is only pointing at whole, or pore. It's either whole or pore, which doesn't really matter, and its name is called stomata. D looks like it's a waxy cuticle, or it's wax cuticle or waxy cuticle, whatever. Doesn't really matter, because its role is to prevent evaporation. But however, it's only a coating, so it's not a cell, so you can't just call it a tissue. I'd say you can safely say it's chemical substance. Anyways, so the answer should be C for this question. Okay? Because C is made of many of the same type of cells. Okay? Many types of cells. C is the answer. Number 5. Which statement describes the net movement of particles during diffusion? So during diffusion, particles move from the high concentration to low concentration. So looks like A and B can be potential answers, but there's a subtle difference between A and B in that A is saying down a concentration gradient, B is saying against the concentration gradient. So if something moves from high to low place, then the substance or the thing has moved from the high to low place or slope, and the direction is going down, right? It's obvious. High and low, it's like going down. It's not against. So if something moves from or moves against the concentration gradient, that means it's moving from low concentration to high concentration, moving against the gradient. So B is not the right answer, but A is. Okay. Number 6. The diagram shows a section through a mesophyll cell of a leaf. Which part is partially permeable? So partially permeable, as we've already talked about this, the thing that is partially permeable in the cell is called the membrane. So you just have to identify the membrane here, and students often get confused about this. And A is looking at, it's actually pointing at the outer part of the cell wall, such outer part, and B is the membrane. Okay. So membrane is actually, it's attached to the cell wall, or is placed very close to the cell wall. So B is the answer for this one. Okay, don't get confused. Okay. Number 7. What are the smaller basic units of starch and glycogen molecules? So both starch and glycogen molecules are carbohydrates. And both of them are polysaccharides. Okay, these two are both polysaccharides. So which means they are both made of glucose molecules. So glucose molecules are one of the smallest molecules in the carbohydrates, and it's the probably most famous molecule. So D is the answer. Fatty acids and glycerol, they make up fats, and amino acids make up proteins. So A, B, C are not the answers. Okay. Number 8. In a length of DNA, 20% of the bases were T. What is the percentage of base G in this length of DNA? So DNAs have bases in it, and DNAs are made of nucleotides, and the nucleotides have bases, and there are 4 types of bases: A, T, C, G. There's a rule that A and T binds together, and C and G binds together as well, and this rule is called complementary base pairing. Okay, so it says 20% of the DNA, or 20% of the bases in the DNA were T. So T, let's count 20, which means it will only bind with A. So there are 20% of A's as well, A bases. So they'll make up 40%, and of course the rest, C and G together, they'll make up 60%. So if you just divide 60% by 2, then you get 30%. So there are about 30% of C's and 30% of G's. Hence, the answer should be C for this one. All right? Number 9. Some terms used to describe enzyme-controlled reactions are listed. Which terms describe an enzyme? So it is very important to know the definition of the enzyme. So enzymes are biological catalysts that speed up the rate of reaction by lowering activation energy. But you don't actually have to know about the lowering the activation energy part. You guys just have to know that enzymes are catalysts. They are made of proteins. Okay? So 1 and 3 are the descriptions for the enzymes. And when they talk about substrates and products, enzymes will bind with the substrates and then they'll produce products. But it's not that they are not really included in the description of an enzyme. Okay. So 1 and 3 are the terms that describe an enzyme. Okay. Number 10. Which statement describes the effect of temperature on enzymes? So enzymes are proteins. They're sensitive with high temperature, high or low pH as well. So if they're exposed to either of them, then they become denatured, which means they lose their natural structure. Okay? Enzymes turn like this. So high temperatures denature enzymes, yes. Making it difficult for substrate molecules to fit into the active site, yes. This is absolutely right. So this site is called the active site. And at high temperatures, the active site changes the shape. So the substrate that usually fit into the active site can no longer fit into the active site when it becomes denatured. Okay? When the enzyme becomes denatured. Sweet as. Number 11. Tomato fruit production was measured in 5 different environmental conditions. What is the correct conclusion for the data shown in the graph? So, looks like tomato fruit production is increasing as the environmental conditions change. Starting from the open field, it goes to unheated glasshouse, and then tomato fruit production of the heated glasshouse is shown as well. The heated glasshouse with carbon dioxide gas supplied in excess shows quite a bit of tomato fruit production. But the highest one is from the heated glasshouse with an artificial light source and with carbon dioxide gas supplied in excess. Okay. So, let's have a look at the options. A. There are no limiting factors in 1. So tomato fruit production is the lowest. Really, is there no limiting factors in 1? Or it's an open field with no there's no light, of course. There's no carbon dioxide supplied in excess, and there's no measurement of temperature. So all of these affect the photosynthesis of the tomato fruit. And limiting factors, the definition of the limiting factors is that they're the factors that are not present in abundance. Okay? So, can we say that there's no limiting factor in open field? No. It's just that it's not mentioned here. The open field might have light, CO2, or temperature as the limiting factor. It's just not mentioned in this part only. Number B, temperature is the limiting factor in 3. Nope, it says heated. So it's not, this factor, temperature, is not not present in abundance. The temperature here is abundant. Okay, so both A and B are not the answers. Carbon dioxide is the limiting factor in all 5 environmental conditions. No, you can see carbon dioxide in here and here as well. So they're not acting as limiting factors. D, light is the limiting factor in 4. Yes, 4 has temperature measured, and it does have carbon dioxide supplied. So the light is not abundant in 4, and it is in the definition of the limiting factor. So the answer for this question is D. Okay? Cool. Hey, thanks guys. Number 12. How do the air spaces in the spongy mesophyll of a leaf help to adapt it for photosynthesis? So it's asking about the spongy mesophyll's air spaces. So if we just go up to number 4, we can see a diagram of a leaf, or the cross section of the leaf. So this part C is the spongy mesophyll layer. So different from the palisade mesophyll layer, you can see a lot of free spaces, gaps here and there, right? So looks like these air gaps, or you can say air gaps or just gaps, help the gases to be stored. So since plants have to take in carbon dioxide inside, they need spaces within the leaf. So spaces, just like I said, air gaps or air spaces are the spaces where CO2 can just diffuse in. So carbon dioxide gases or molecules, they just diffuse into the leaf because there are the air gaps. Okay, so the answer should be B. Number 13. What is the dietary importance of fiber in humans? So fibers are they're made of celluloses. Oops. Cellulose are found in cell walls of the plant cells. And what happens when fibers taken in is that things like the body parts like small intestine and large intestines, the muscles in them, actually the muscles in small intestine and the large intestine, they contract and relaxes. It contracts and relaxes to digest the fiber. However, we can't digest the fiber because we don't have enzymes such as cellulases. So cellulases are the enzymes that digests. Okay, that was a bad handwriting. Cellulases. So these guys digest cellulose molecules. However, we don't have them. So what happens is that the intestine, the bowel movement, or the movement of the small and large intestine continues. And what it does also is that the food molecules get pushed pushed towards the let's say towards the rectum. So it travels from the food molecules travel from small intestine to large intestine, and then it reaches the rectum where the food molecules remain as feces or stored as feces. Okay, so this movement of food molecules are actually happening because of this movement of bowel movement. This movement of contraction and relaxation causes the food molecules to move is called peristalsis. Okay, peristalsis. And that help food move through the alimentary canal. And this happens because of the fiber. I mean, it doesn't actually happen because of the fiber. It happens, but fiber helps food molecules to move through the alimentary canal faster and probably effectively. So, answer is B. Okay. Number 14. In which part of the alimentary canal does ingestion take place? Ingestion, the word ingestion, means taking the food molecules into the body. So, which means how we eat food. So, let's have a look at the options. A, anus? No. Okay. It's just wrong. I'm not gonna say much thing about it, but this is hilarious. The anus taking. Okay, so A is not the answer. Liver, of course not. Mouth, yes. We take food. We take food using our mouth, right? So C is the answer for this one. Stomach, that's where the food molecules go in. So D is not the answer. And okay, A is certainly not the answer. Okay, C is the answer for this question. All right. Okay, thanks, guys. Number 15. A non-woody plant stem is placed in water containing a red dye. It is left for 1 day, and then a section of the stem is examined using a microscope. Which tissue is stained red? So, the non-woody plant stem is placed in water containing red dye. Okay, so the water containing red dye is the key here. It was left for 1 day and then it was examined. Okay, so which tissue is stained red? Of course, the red dye will have, it's inside water, it's dissolved in water. So anything that's red should have water. And of course, it's D because these tissues that are placed towards the center are called xylems. The ones on the outer part are called phloems. Phloems. Xylems contain water. They're used to transport water and minerals. Phloems are used to transport sucrose molecules and amino acids, like those nutrients. So answer is D because it's the xylem that contains water and the mineral, and the water now has the red dye, and it's asking for the tissue that is stained red, so the answer should be D for this one. All right. Number 16. The diagram shows a cross-section through a leaf. From which cell will most water evaporate during transpiration? So it's asking which cell will most water evaporate during transpiration. So transpiration is the loss of water vapor by evaporation through a hole called or holes called stomata. Okay, this part. So, and it's asking about the cell. So I guess the answer is the cell with where the cell that has most water. The evaporation will happen here and the water vapor will be formed and then go out of the stomata. So D should be answer. D is the spongy mesophyll cell. And some of you guys might think, hey, well, the xylem has a lot of water. Wouldn't it be the one then? No, we can't say that because xylem is it's the vessel, xylem vessel. Of course, xylem vessels are made of xylem cells. However, xylem cells are not the ones that are responsible for, let's say, forming water vapors. They only transport the water. So the water moves from, actually here, B, to the cell through osmosis, and then through osmosis again, the water molecules move, and then they will eventually reach the surface of the spongy cells. They'll reach the spongy cells, and they are attached on the surfaces of the spongy cells like this, and then they get evaporated and then become water vapors, and then they'll go out by diffusion. Okay, so the answer is D for this one. Number 17. The diagram shows the circulatory system of a fish, where in the circulatory system is the oxygen concentration lowest. So the oxygen concentration becomes the lowest when the oxygen molecules get used. Okay, if they're used by the cells for respiration, the concentration, the oxygen concentration, will become decreased. So we just have to find where respiration occurs. Of course, the oxygen will be transported from the gills to the body through the blood. Okay, and when the oxygen or oxygenated blood reaches the body, they'll be used by the body or the cells in the body, right? So Z surely will have low levels of oxygen. But if you look at X, the blood that contains less oxygen now goes to the heart, and then probably some of the oxygen that are left in the blood will be used up by the heart, and then goes to the gills to become oxygenated. So X is where the oxygen concentration will be the lowest. Y is the blood vessel that contains the most oxygen or the highest oxygen concentration because it just got oxygenated, and X will be the lowest. So the answer for this one is A. Number 18. What is a function of the lymphatic system? So lymphatic system is the system that consists of lymphatic vessel and lymph nodes. Okay, so lymphatic nodes or lymphatic node stores white blood cells, and they also make white blood cells as well. And the lymphatic vessels are where the lymphatic cells or the white blood cells travel through. Okay, that was a bad drawing there. Okay, so the white blood cells get made in the lymphatic nodes, and then they get transported by the lymphatic vessels. The white blood cells and the fat molecules that are also transported by the lymphatic vessel are collectively called as tissue fluids. When they enter the lymphatic system, they're actually called lymphs, but they also have another name, which is called the body fluids. So body fluids consist of like white blood cells and fat molecules, and a bit of that and that. So C is the only reasonable answer for this circulation of body fluids. A, nope, doesn't make any sense because it doesn't help with absorption of glucose. So absorption of glucose is achieved by small intestine, not lymphatic system. Blood clotting, it's achieved by platelets. So nope, lymphatic system has nothing to do with it. Temperature regulation has nothing to do with the lymphatic system because temperature regulation is actually controlled by, let's say, thyroid glands, which you guys don't actually have to know. It's part of homeostasis, and of course, you have to know a bit about that, like in topic 14, but not for this topic. So let's talk about this one when we talk about topic 14. Okay. Anyways, it's got nothing to do with the lymphatic system, so only reasonable answer is C. Number 19. The graph shows the response of the body to vaccination. Which word should be used to replace the letter X to complete the label on the y-axis? This one. Okay. Right. Well, as time goes by, we can see that the something concentration in the blood gets increased. Why do we take vaccination? We want to increase the number of antibodies. So antibodies are the proteins that protect your body. So after vaccination, the amount of antibody that's produced within our body gets increased. So that's how we protect ourselves by getting the vaccine shots against the viruses and pathogens, other pathogens as well. So A is the right answer for this one. Antigens are the substances that are on the surface of the disease-causing microorganisms called pathogens. Platelets are they're good things within our body. They help us to form the blood clots. So when we get injured, we immediately make the blood clots, and that's done by platelets. Of course, vaccination is not for making these platelets. It is there. We use it for making antibodies. So the answer is A. Number 20. Which cells produce mucus? This is an easy question. Answer should be B. Goblet cells are the ones that make mucus. And ciliated cells, they move these mucus out of our body, right? Nerve cells perform nerves. They don't produce mucus. White blood cells produce, antibodies. They form our immune system. So, no. B is the right answer for this one. Okay. Number 21. Which row shows a change that occurs during ventilation? So during ventilation, two things can happen: inspiration and expiration. So during inspiration, we take air in. So in order to do so, we have to make the thorax volume to increase. So by increasing the thorax volume, which is chest, so chest volume, the pressure automatically decreases. So bigger the space, less pressure. Okay. Then the air moves from the outside to the inside. So air outside the body is relatively low pressure than the inside the body. So air always moves from the high pressure to low pressure. Hence the air movement goes in. So this is not right. And this is of course not right. So expiration is the other way around. So by decreasing the volume, we increase the thorax pressure, the chest pressure. So the air moves from the chest to the outside because the air outside is relatively lower. I mean, the pressure of the air is relatively lower outside the body than inside the body. Hence, the answer for 21 is B. Okay? Number 22. What is the balanced chemical equation for anaerobic respiration in yeast? So yeast can do both aerobic and anaerobic respirations. So when it goes on the anaerobic respiration, it changes glucose molecules into ethanol and CO2. So we just have to find ethanol and CO2 here. This is the chemical formula for glucose, and this is the chemical formula for ethanol. To be more precise, is this. So there are 2 moles of ethanol molecules produced, and also 2 moles of CO2 produced from 1 mole of glucose. So the answer for this question is C. Okay? Number 23. Which statement correctly explains the difference in concentration of glucose in the kidney tubule between X and Y? So, okay, if you look at X here and Y here, in between there's kidney tubule. So kidney tubule absorbs or reabsorbs what is needed for the body, and our body loves glucose. And when the kidney tries to reabsorb the glucose molecules, they do that even if we have a lot of glucose in our body. So even if the glucose concentration is high in our body and relatively low in the kidney, they reabsorb them using active transport. Okay? So the glucose concentration should be higher in X than Y, because if there is, like, let's say 100 of glucose molecules, then almost all of them gets reabsorbed, and Y has like almost none. no glucose molecules. So the glucose concentration is higher at X than at Y because glucose has been actively transported out of the kidney tubule. So B is the right answer for this. Okay? Number 24. Where in the eye is the greatest concentration of cells that allow humans to see color? So there are a few parts in the eye that receives the light energy or the light. One part is called retina, the other one is called fovea. Retina contains two types of cells, rods and cones, whereas fovea contains cones only. And it's the cones that allows us to distinguish colors. So RGB, like red, green, blue colors. So the light comes into the eye and it reaches the back of the eye. Okay. How about this? Okay, that's better. Right. That was a crappy arrow there. But you know what I mean, okay? You know what I'm trying to do. Like this. Okay. So, B is retina and C is fovea. And of course, retina does have cones, but not as much as fovea because fovea has like cones only. So for this question, I would choose C as the answer because, yeah, cones are mostly concentrated in fovea and that allows us to see the color. Okay? So the answer for this question is C. Number 25. A scientist investigated the effect of drinking iced water on skin temperature. They drank a large volume of iced water and monitored the temperature of their skin. The results are shown on the graph. Which explanation of the change in skin temperature during the first 10 minutes is correct? So, okay, well, let's figure out what's happening here. Excuse me. So it looks like people or subjects drank iced water and their skin temperature changed. So as time goes by, you can see that the temperature of the skin decreased and increased later on. Usually our body emit or radiate heat energy, and the heat energy comes from our blood. So usually the blood vessel is quite close to the skin, and the heat energy from the blood goes out of the body. So when we are cold, our blood vessels constrict, and the process is called vasoconstriction. And when it happens, less blood flows through the blood vessel, so therefore we lose less heat energy because there's less blood. And also, now the blood vessel is further away from the outside skin, so there's less energy that actually gets out of the body. The heat energy kind of stays still inside the body. Therefore, we can actually keep our body temperature, like constant body temperature, and that process is called homeostasis. So the whole thing is a part of homeostasis, and the meaning of homeostasis is the maintenance of the constant internal environment. So we keep ourselves warm, like at 37 degrees Celsius. So the answer should be either B or A or B.
and occurred reducing blood flow to the skin is the correct one. Hence, the answer should be B for this one. B. Okay? Number 26. An experiment was set up to investigate the growth of shoots in different conditions as shown. Which diagram shows the results that would be seen in a few days later? Okay. Looks like we got some plants here, and there are three types of plants. One, just normal. Another one with shoot tip removed, and the last one has foil cap on it. Okay, so it looks like this guy is not receiving the light on its tip. And this guy certainly can't because it just lost the shoot tip. But the other parts can still receive the light. Okay? So, what would happen? Okay? So we know that the plants, they produce a hormone, a type of hormone called auxin. And auxin is a growth hormone. Growth hormone. And the auxin is actually produced at the shoot tip. Okay, shoot tip produces a lot of auxin, which does hate the light. So when the light is coming from the right side, the shoot tip produces auxin, and they run to the shaded area. And since it's a growth hormone, auxin molecules, they promote elongation. So elongation means it makes something longer. For instance, the plant cells become longer when auxin is released. So the auxin promotes the elongation of the cells on the left side. So that causes the shoot to bend towards the source of the light. Since only left side gets longer, it becomes longer, elongated, and the right side stays the same. But the middle one, this guy, can't do that because its shoot tip has been removed, so it can't produce auxin at all, so it just stays still. The right side one, this fella, has foil cap on its shoot tip, so it's not going to detect the direction of the light yet. It has the shoot tip, so it's going to produce auxin, and the auxin will be distributed evenly, which will cause the shoot to grow upwards. Okay, so the answer will be D, because the left side one will bend, and the middle one is not gonna do anything, and the right side one will grow towards the sky. It's gonna grow upwards. Hence, the answer is D for this one. Number 27. An advisor was presented with a list of statements for a discussion group with potential parents who are considering using in vitro fertilization to start a family. Which statements about IVF are correct? Okay, let's have a look at the options here. Number 1, IVF is available to everyone, which is not true. Not everyone can do or go through IVF. Some people are not, their body, let's say their reproductive system, are not supportive. And also, IVF is for those who have, let's say, some problem with the oviducts, usually, because during IVF, the eggs are taken out from the body or from the reproductive system, and this is called ovary. So ovary contains eggs, and the people, the doctors, they take out the eggs and then they put them in petri dish. Actually, they probably just put one per petri dish, and then they provide the egg with a lot of sperms. So it causes a artificial fertilization. So when this artificial fertilization is successful, then that egg or fertilized egg, or we can actually safely call it embryo. This embryo is taken back and put it into women's uterus and implanted on the lining of the uterus. So this is done when a person has problem with the oviduct, or let's say oviduct is blocked, so the sperms cannot go into the oviduct to meet up with the egg. In this case, IVF is often used. So it's not available to everyone as well. And number 2, IVF is 100% successful. No, it's not. It's actually quite low. The percentage of the successful results is quite low, actually. I think it's about 30 to 40 if at highest. Okay. So 2 is not correct as well. Number 3, IVF provides an opportunity for single parents to have a family. Yes, it does provide opportunity for single parents. So number 5, sperm or egg donation may be involved. Yes, this is absolutely true. So if there's a guy who unfortunately cannot make sperms and has a partner, and if they want babies, then the female, his partner, can get the sperm donation. Okay, so and they can successfully get a baby, but this baby's father, may not be him. Biological father is, of course, the donor of the sperm. So the couple are not always the biological parents. This is absolutely true. So number 5 is true. Let's have a look at number 4. IVF is not expensive and everyone can afford it. No, it's quite expensive. I don't actually know how much it is, but it's quite expensive. So that's why some countries, government actually support those who wants a baby but has to go through IVF. Okay. So the answer for this question is D. Number 28. Which sequence of structures does a pollen tube grow through in a flower? So let's talk about this. This is talking about the pollination and what happens after the pollination. So when a pollen lands on the stigma of a flower, it produces a structure called a pollen tube. So the pollen tube penetrates the female part of the flower, and this part is called style. And this is the ovary, which has ovule, and there are eggs. Okay. So, looks like C is the correct answer. So you can see the pollen tube penetrates the style, but before the style, the pollen has to land on stigma. So stigma is the first one, and then goes to the style, and then goes into the ovary to reach the ovule. Okay. So the answer should be C for this one. Number 29. The diagram shows some of the events of the menstrual cycle. In which shaded zone of the cycle would progesterone levels be the highest? So let's talk a little bit about the menstrual cycle. So menstrual cycle on average lasts for 28 days. So there's ovulation happening at day 14 usually. So it's on average. Of course, people are different, so it can be different many people. And the progesterone level actually rises after the ovulation. But you have to be careful because I said the progesterone level increases after the ovulation, but C is not the answer because as you can see, straight after the ovulation, the level is still quite low. Okay, so I would say D is the correct answer because as you can see, the highest level is at around 22, yeah, about 22 days. So D is the answer. But let me tell you about what the progesterone does. Progesterone, it keeps the lining of the uterus thick. Okay, the lining of the uterus. This is the uterus, and this is the lining of the uterus. The lining of the uterus becomes thicker when estrogen, another hormone called estrogen, gets released. The estrogen releases at the start, but it drops as soon as the ovulation occurs or right before the ovulation occurs. Okay? So now the thing that kept the lining of the uterus is gone. So now the lining of the uterus will become thinner, but the female body doesn't want to do that. It has to maintain the lining of the uterus thick so that if the egg becomes successful in fertilization and becomes embryo, it can implant itself on the uterus lining. It only happens if the lining of the uterus is thick. Okay, so the lining of the uterus should be maintained thick, and it's the progesterone that does or that helps this process, or it actually keeps the uterus lining thicker. Okay, so it gets secreted or it gets released as soon as the estrogen level goes down. Hence, that's why I said it increases level after the ovulation, and therefore the answer is D for this. Okay. Number 30. What is needed in the cytoplasm to make proteins at a ribosome? Okay, so what is needed in the cytoplasm to make proteins at a ribosome? So ribosome is the organelle that produces proteins within a cell so that the cell can actually use the protein. Okay. So what is needed? Of course, the cells need DNA. So the DNA becomes RNA, or actually DNA doesn't become RNA. mRNAs are actually made from the DNA. I've got to make the correction there. And the process is called transcription. So from DNA, mRNAs are made. And these mRNAs go out of the nucleus and they meet up with the ribosome. And of course, this mRNA gets read by, or gets translated by ribosomes, and that's how proteins are made. So this process is called translation. And of course, we have to say that DNA is needed, but strictly speaking, it's the mRNA that are read, that are translated. And of course, to make proteins, we need amino acids, right? Proteins are made of amino acids. So the answer for this question should be C. All good? Sweet as. Number 31. Pangolins are mammals. One species of pangolin has 40 chromosomes per body cell. How many chromosomes will a sperm cell from this species of pangolin have? Okay, so it says there are 40 chromosomes in a body cell, which means its diploid number is 40. So diploid is 2n. So there are 40 chromosomes. And which means there are 20 chromosomes. Oops. The 20 chromosomes in pairs. Okay. In a sperm cells are gametes, sex cells, and they are haploids, which means they have not a pairs of chromosomes. They don't have pairs of chromosomes, but they have singlets of chromosomes. So, which means they have 20 chromosomes. Hence, the answer should be B. Number 32. Which adaptation is shown in the leaves of hydrophytes? So, let's have a look at the word hydrophytes. The word hydro means water. Phytes means plants. Okay. So they're plants that live in or on the water. So let's have a look at the options here. A, hairs present on the upper and lower surfaces. No, it's got nothing to do with adaptation on or in plants that live on or in the water. Okay. The reason is that the hairs on the leaves usually prevents the leaves to lose the water vapor surrounding the leaves. So it actually the hair or hairs trap the water vapors around the leaves or surrounding the leaves. But the hydrophytes are not lacking water, right? They got plenty of water, so A is not the right answer. B looks like it's the answer. It contains large air spaces. So for some hydrophytes, they actually live on the surface of the water. In order to live on the water, they have to float. So by increasing the buoyancy, they can float better. And it's the air spaces inside the leaves that provides this buoyancy. So B is the right answer. C, now the stomata are usually present on the upper surface. Okay. The stomata, the holes or pores, are present on the surface, so that they can do gas exchange much better if the air spaces are at the bottom, they'll be blocked by the water surface. So C is not the answer. D, thick cuticle present. No. The cuticle is waterproof and it conserves the water vapor inside the leaves. So hydrophytes are they're not lacking any water, so they don't have to conserve water. The thick cuticle is not needed. They rather have thin cuticles. Okay, it should be thin. So D is not the answer as well. Therefore, B is the right answer for this question. Okay. Number 33. Sickle cell anemia is a genetic disorder which results in severe illness in homozygous individuals. In some human populations, being heterozygous can be beneficial. So, what could be the reason for this? What could be the reason for this? So let's talk about sickle cell anemia first. So it's a genetic disorder, and this is caused by HBS allele. So if a person has HBA alleles only, then the person will have red blood cell in its normal shape because the hemoglobins are normal. But if a person has HBS and HBS, then the person's red blood cells will be sickle cell or sickle shaped. The funny thing is, however, if a person has both A and S, so the normal and the sickle cell allele, then some of his or her red blood cells will be normal, and some of the others actually, will be sickle shaped. And in Africa and some other country as well, or some other countries, malaria attacks the normal red blood cells, but it can't attack on the red blood cells that are shaped in sickle shape. So these people with homozygous HBS allele can actually die from not receiving enough oxygen because the sickle-shaped hemoglobins or the red blood cells are not efficient in transporting the oxygen. So they can die from it. And other people can actually die from getting malaria. So only the heterozygous individuals survive. So the answer for this one, 33, is B. A is not correct because it is affected a little bit as well. Heterozygous individuals, these people are affected as well. C is not right answer because it's caused by recessive allele, not dominant. And disorder is sex-linked? No, it's got nothing to do with the genders. So B is the right answer for this one. Number 34. Which statement about selective breeding is correct? So in order to solve this problem, we have to know what the selective breeding is. So selective breeding is the process by which humans use animal breeding and plants breeding to selectively develop certain characteristics. So we have to check the options here. So it does not involve humans. No, I just said that humans are involved in this. So A is certainly not the right answer. Let's have a look at B. It involves struggle for survival. No, it's got nothing to do with the struggle for survival because humans are involved. We just select certain animals or plants
and we just cross or like mate them, breed them, right? So struggle? No, there's no such thing. See, it always involves only one parent. Now it always involves two. Actually, not always, but mostly involves two parents. Okay, because we have to breed them. Involving only one parent can happen in genetic modification, but this is not talking about genetic modification. This is talking about selective breeding. So C is not the right answer as well. Number D, it involves parents that possess desirable features. This is absolutely right. This is the purpose of doing selective breeding. If we want to have a desirable characteristic or desirable product, we take the parents, like the organisms, that possess that feature, and we breed them together to get more of the features. Okay. So the answer for this one. Number 35. The diagram shows the water cycle. 4 different processes are numbered. Which row identifies the processes correctly? So this is quite an easy question. So if you look at number 2, you can see that water is being evaporated. So evaporation number 2. Wow. C is the answer. We got the answer straight away. But let's have a look at the other parts as well. So the air now has a lot of water vapors, and they become clouds. And becoming clouds is a process of condensation. So the water vapor becomes water liquids, and of course they're quite light at the moment. And if they get, let's say, if the temperature goes down, then they become precipitates, such as rain or snows. And precipitation, of course, this one is number 1 here. And transpiration is happening as well here. So transpiration is the loss of water vapor from the leaves of the plant through stomata. So the water vapor is coming out of the leaves and they become clouds as well. So number C is the correct answer for this question. Number 36. A herd of red deer live in a forest that contains snakes and large variety of birds. Which group of organisms is an example of a population? So let's look at this. Okay, if we just pick one red deer, so one red deer, it is considered as a species. Okay, and if there are many red deers, I'm just gonna write red deers. If there are like many of them gathered around at one place at the same time, then we call it a population. Population of red deer. Okay. So I guess B is the right answer. All the red deer in the forest. Okay. So the population should have a same type of species. Okay. It's a group of same type of species. Okay. Only one species gather around that forms a population. But if there are many populations gathered around, let's say there are like red deers, snakes, and birds all together, that's called community. Okay? Anyways, answer for this question is B. Number 37. With which kingdoms do bacteria share the same genetic code? So genetic codes are actually shared in many organisms. So
This question is asking which kingdoms do bacteria share the same genetic code. It's going to be A, because genetic codes are actually shared, or same genetic codes are actually shared within many organisms. Like almost all organisms share a same genetic code. For instance, let's say hypothetically, the genetic code or codon called CCC this stands for a particular amino acid, okay? Let's say CCC stands for type A amino acid. If CCC is taken out and put into a bacteria, then bacteria will make the protein, not protein, actually protein containing a type of amino acid called A. So same amino acid will be formed with the same codon. So since the same genetic code is shared between many organisms, we can actually use that advantage to produce desired products by inserting or putting certain genes into some other organisms. For instance, human insulin gets formed by bacteria using this characteristic. Okay, human genes for insulin is taken out and inserted into the bacteria, and what happens? Bacteria produce human insulins. Okay, that's possible because the same genetic codes are shared throughout many organisms. Hence, the answer should be A. Number 38. Which process makes use of a genetically engineered organism? Okay, which process makes use of a genetically engineered organism? So it's actually quite close. It's related to 37, question 37, slightly. I would say the answer for this question is A. So genetically engineered organism means that the gene from one species is taken out and inserted into another species to produce desired product. Okay? So when people need insulin, human insulin, we don't take it out from the humans, but rather we take out the human genes for insulin, human insulin genes, let's say, and we insert it on in bacterial plasmid. And we put the whole thing back into the bacteria, and bacteria will make proteins based on what's written in the plasmid, and now it has a human insulin gene. So it's going to read it and make proteins according to the genes. And it's going to produce insulin, okay, human insulin. So A is the correct answer for this one. B is talking about enzymes. No. C, still enzyme. No. Yeast. No. So B and C and D as well, they are... No, actually, my bad. B and C are talking about the enzymes, like biotechnology that uses enzymes. D is just using yeast, okay? Yeast to produce ethanol for brewing, like making beer and spirits. So, anyways, A is the answer for this one, okay? Number 39. What is a reason for conserving plant species? That's a good question. Why do we need to conserve plant species? Is it to absorb oxygen from the air? Absolutely not. We need more oxygen, right? We don't want to absorb. We don't want plant species to absorb oxygen from the air. That's gonna be disastrous. B, to decrease rainfall? Really? If we conserve plant species, do we decrease rainfall? No, it's not gonna happen. It's not going to decrease rainfall. It can actually increase the rainfall because more plant species, more transpiration, more precipitation, and more rain, right? Because plant species will give out the water vapor by transpiration, and then by condensation they become clouds, and clouds will cause raining or snowing as well. So nope, absolutely not. C, to obtain drugs for medicinal use? Yes. If we have many species, then many species can produce many stuff that we don't have, right? There are some like medicinal substances that are produced by plants. Since ancient times, we use these herbs and stuff to produce medicine. So C is correct. D, to release carbon dioxide into what good would it be, right? D is not the right answer. Okay, the only answer for number 39 is C. Number 40. The food web shows the feeding relationships in a woodland. If all the chaffinches in the food web die, which effect would this have? Funny word there, chaffinches. Chaffinch. It's a small bird. Okay, it's a common small European bird. So if chaffinches die, then there is a increase. There's an increase in the number of caterpillars because less chaffinches eat caterpillars, so their numbers will increase. However, if there's an increase in caterpillars, then there's a decrease in trees. It's possible to see decrease in the number of trees. So the right answer will be A. The amount of damage to trees will increase. Right. So more caterpillars will eat the trees. So A is correct. B is not. The food supply for gray squirrels will increase. No. More damage will be done on trees. So the food supply for gray squirrels will decrease. The number of wood pigeons will increase. Nope. For the same reason. Nope. The population of caterpillars will decrease. No, like I said before, less chaffinches will cause increase in the number of caterpillars. So the right answer for the last question for 2022 May-June paper 2 version 21 paper is A. Okay. Hey, thanks guys. Don't forget to subscribe the channel. It will mean a lot to me. Thanks guys.